Hey, what's up, nerds? It's Paul at Radio Free Hammer Hall, and we got leaks of the new General's Handbook 2526. I'm excited. We're going to go through it. All I've got is the battle tactics and the battle plans. I don't know if there's any other information in there. Um, last season, we had like the bodyguard rules and all that jazz. Don't know if any of that is present. I've got battle tactics and battle plans. What we know about the battle tactics is that you're going to be choosing two of these cards that have three objectives each, and you have to do them in order. So they have to be sequential. They're going to be worth 5 points each. So let's get into it. Without further ado, you know what? I will add a little bit of ado first. I got to be honest, I don't know where these leaks came from. I just got a link in a Discord server. So it's just out there on the internet. So it's fair game to me, as far as I'm concerned. If somebody out there leaked it and it's available to the general public, I'm fine with doing a video on it, because I don't even know who violated their NDA. It was somebody, but I'm certainly not going to sink a friend or somebody that sends me stuff, which doesn't really ever happen. But, I just want to be clear in case Games Workshop is watching this. As far as I know, nobody that I know put these on the internet. So I'm just sharing what's readily available to anybody else that looks around. As you can see, it's just in an imager file. We can go through all of the images from all of these and get cooking. All right. We're going to go through the battle tactics first. I believe there are 6 different sets of these. Again, you have to do them in order, and you'll be selecting 2 battle tactic cards in your list building. So, master the paths. First, we cut off the head. So you complete this battle tactic at the end of your turn if any enemy heroes have been destroyed this battle. So as soon as you kill an enemy hero, you get step 1. But you can't get step 2 or 3 until you get step 1. Next, you complete this battle tactic at the end of your turn if there are more friendly units in neutral territory than enemy units. If there is no neutral territory in the battle plan that you are playing, you complete this battle tactic at the end of your turn if there are no enemy units within friendly territory. So you basically are pushing the enemy out of neutral territory. If there's no neutral territory, you have to push them out of your territory. And there's some very interesting battle plans here that we're going to be seeing later on, that are going to make that very interesting, perhaps quite difficult to do. And finally, envelop and strangle. You complete this battle tactic at the end of your turn if at least 3 different friendly units are wholly within 9 inches of a different corner of the battlefield, and only one of those corners is wholly within friendly territory. No more than one of these units can have been set up this turn. Whew. So we have to kill an enemy hero. At least it doesn't have to be the general. No specific hero, just any hero. Then we have to push the enemy out of our territory or neutral territory. And then we have to get 3 units to corners of the battlefield. One of them can be set up this turn. So ambushy stuff, teleports, all of that does help with this. But still, that's going to opposite corners. And all of this is kind of pulling you in separate directions, right? You want to engage the enemy, then you want to get the enemy back, like push them back, and then you want to spread out afterward, then get out of combat. So this is going to be an interesting one to do. Let me just check chat real quick and see if there is anybody dropping any messages. I apologize. I'm in like another window. I'm just on my laptop So if you happen to be hanging out, feel free to drop something in the chat, but I see right now we don't have anything. So battle tactic card number 2, Restless Energy. First, Water with Blood. You complete this battle tactic at the end of your turn if you control an objective that was controlled by your opponent at the start of your turn. That's interesting. So we just have to steal an objective. That is basically play the game, right? Invasive Species. You complete this battle tactic at the end of your turn if you control every objective within enemy territory. If there are no objectives within enemy territory, you complete this battle tactic at the end of your turn if you control every objective that was controlled by your opponent at the start of the turn. Woof. That's hard. And then All Roots Entwined. You complete this battle tactic at the end of your turn if you control every objective on the battlefield. I feel like this card is not going to be chosen much. This is hard. This is really hard. It's basically just dominate the table and table your opponent and have enough stuff left over to control objectives. All right, Intercept and Recover. This one has a whole bunch of additional text. At the start of the battle, your opponent must pick 3 of their units on the battlefield to be carrying Gyronite treasure. They cannot pick faction terrain features or manifestations. A unit can only carry 1 Gyronite treasure. If your opponent has fewer than 3 units on the battlefield, you automatically complete a number of these battle tactics, starting with the domination battle tactic, followed by strike and then affray, until the number remaining of uncompleted battle tactics is equal to the number of enemy units on the battlefield. If you went second in the previous battle round and chose to go first in the current battle round, your opponent can remove 1 Gyronite treasure from one of their units at the start of the battle round. So basically, if you double your opponent, you're missing out on 5 points. So I guess no doubling with this. So first, Stolen Seed Pod. You complete this battle tactic at the end of your turn if at least 1 enemy unit carrying the treasure was destroyed, then 2, then 3. So you basically just have to go kill those units with the Gyronite treasure. This one I think is not bad. If you're in a very killy army, and something that has shooting, so you can kind of pick your targets even if you're not up in combat, this will be interesting. All right. Wrathful Cycles. Defiant Surge. You complete this battle tactic at the end of your turn if you control more objectives than your opponent. That's not too bad. I mean, that's just kind of a standard sort of thing that we've been doing in the past. Daring Resurgence. You complete this battle tactic at the end of your turn if you are the underdog this battle round. There is at least 1 friendly unit on the battlefield, and at least half of the friendly units on the battlefield use a fight ability this turn. So the upshot is you have to be the underdog, and you have to have at least half of your units fight this turn. Having to try to be the underdog is interesting. That could be a challenge. All right, Master of Strategy. You complete this battle tactic at the end of your turn if there is a different friendly unit wholly within each large quarter of the battlefield. You control more objectives than your opponent, and there are no enemy units contesting any objectives that you control. That's a lot. So you have to control. You have to have units in each quarter of the battlefield. You have to control more objectives than your opponent. So basically just be winning and have stuff all over the board. And the tricky thing is having no enemy units contesting any objectives that you control. Now, because you have to do these in order, this is going to come later in the game, and that's going to be much harder to do. All right, battle tactic card number 5, the Scouting Force. All right. At the start of the battle, every friendly non-hero infantry and non-hero cavalry unit wholly within friendly territory becomes a scout unit. You cannot complete these battle tactics with scout units that are in combat. Replacement units that replace scout units are also scout units. So we need to tag on also not in combat to score all of these battle tactics. So first, raiding party, you complete this battle tactic at the end of your turn if there are 3 or more friendly scout units wholly outside of friendly territory. So have stuff that's fast, get it across the board. All right. Bold Explorers, you complete this battle tactic at the end of your turn if 3 or more objectives or terrain features that you control in any combination are being contested by any friendly scout units. These objectives and terrain features must be within enemy territory. So you have to control terrain features and objectives, at least 3 of them. Your units can't be in combat that are doing that. And it all has to be in enemy territory. That's the hard part. This is going to be very challenging, especially with countercharge available. Your opponent is going to steal this from you a lot with countercharges. All right, and then Courageous Adventurers. You complete this battle tactic at the end of your turn if a friendly scout unit that was not set up this turn is contesting a terrain feature that you control that is wholly within enemy territory that is more than 6 inches from friendly territory. So it's interesting that controlling terrain is a part of this, and there are others. I've already kind of thumbed through these. There are battle plans that care about controlling terrain features as well, which is super interesting. So this largely is get fast units across the board, don't have them in combat, and control stuff in enemy territory with them. That's going to make for a very interesting time. Okay, and finally, number 6, Attune to Gairan. Sacred Centrality. You complete this battle tactic at the end of your turn if there are at least 2 friendly units within 3 inches of the center of the battlefield that are not in combat. Easy peasy if you're going first, or it's easy if you're going first. It's kind of hard in other circumstances because your opponent is just going to jump in the center very often. All right, Fey Strikes. You complete this battle tactic at the end of your turn if all of the following are true. At least 2 friendly units have used a retreat ability this turn, and at least 2 other friendly units used a charge ability this turn, and at least one of those units ended the charge move in combat with an enemy unit from which any of the lure units retreated. So you have to retreat with 2, charge with 2 different ones, and one of them has to charge a unit that the retreating units used to be in combat with. Okay. And then finally, Purification Rites. You complete this battle tactic at the end of your turn if there are no enemy units within friendly territory and no enemy units within neutral territory. So you have to be pushing your whole army across the board. No enemy units in friendly or neutral territory. I'm sorry. No enemy units within neutral or friendly territory. There we go. So that is all of the cards. These are very interesting, I think. I am not yet sure entirely what to make of these. We're going to be selecting these in the list construction part of the game. So before you even show up to the table, you're building your list, you got to choose battle tactics. Some of these are going to really kind of rub up against each other, others not so much. Some of them are going to pair well, you know. But, you know, there's some that are killy. There's some that are about speed and avoiding combat. So I think if you're playing a very killy army that's just going to go kill all of the enemy stuff, then intercept and recover is probably going to be good because you're just going to zoom in and kill those specific units. That's one that I just call winning the game. But it's something that your opponent can play around by denying you those points by kind of hiding the units that are selected. All right. Let's see. This is the first one. You kill a hero, then you push forward. There's a couple that are kind of like push forward and kill stuff. But all of these really are going to make you build your list in different ways. So in some armies, what we currently have of like everybody's kind of going to have like these fast units to kind of get out on the flanks and into the back of enemy territory to score a battle tactics. It's just not always going to be a thing anymore. So I like that these are going to pull you in different directions. And I can definitely see how you can easily build a list around this and how some armies are going to be better at this or better at certain battle tactic cards than others. Whew. All right. Moving on here to battle plans. Let me grab a drink real quick because I am parched. All of these battle plans have a twist, and a lot of them have some interesting scoring. I love these battle plans. A lot of it is very much like what narrative battle plans are like. So I think that's going to be a lot of fun. Like this makes me want to play match play more than I have in a long time. All right. So first, passing seasons. In battle rounds 2 and 4, if you are the underdog, you can use the burgeoning rejuvenation ability. In battle rounds 3 and 5, while you are the underdog, your army has the powerful resurgence ability. So once per battle round at the start of the battle round, burgeoning rejuvenation, pick one of the following. Heal D3 every friendly unit contesting an Oakenbrow objective. So there's 2 of those. Those are the ones in the player's starting territories. Or for the rest of the battle round while a friendly unit is contesting a Gnarl Root objective. So those are the 2 that are outside of territories in the opposite table quarters. If that unit has a ward save, add 1 to ward rolls. If the unit does not have a ward save, it gets a ward 6 up. Nurgle will be very happy with their 4-up wards. And Death will love their 5-up wards. It's going to be interesting because it forces you to be the underdog to get these bonuses, but you still have to win the game. So this definitely lets you kind of sit on the objectives. Powerful Resurgence. Add 1 to wound rolls for combat attacks made by friendly units while they are contesting a Gnarl Root objective. So once again, that is going to be in rounds 3 and 5. And then nothing happens during the first battle round. This is only burgeoning rejuvenation on 2 and 4, powerful resurgence on 3 and 5. All right. And then scoring. In battle rounds 1, 3, and 5, score 5 victory points for each gnarl root objective that you control. In battle rounds 2 and 4, you score 5 victory points for each Oakenbrow objective that you control. So the objectives that you control don't always matter. It's going to be alternating turns which set of objectives you're going to be able to score on. And with this, each one is scoring 5 victory points. So you're going to have a max of 25 victory points from the battle plan, and then 30 potential victory points from battle tactics. So your battle tactics are actually more important than the mission itself for this one. All right. Up next, battle plan number 2, Paths of the Fae. If you're the underdog, you can use the Spirit Paths Open, and both players can use the Stumbling Forth ability. Let's take a quick look at the map. So we're starting in the center, the 4 objectives in the 4 quarters of the battlefield, and then one more in the center. So this is going to be a battle plan that forces you to spread out. All right. So the Spirit Paths Open. You pick 2 objectives to be the targets. All units within 6 inches of any target objectives must be removed from the battlefield by their commander. Those units are vanished. Then, starting with you, players must take it in turns to each set up a friendly vanished unit wholly within 6 inches of either of the target objectives and more than 3 inches from all enemy units. Each model must be set up as close to that objective as possible. So this is preventing you from kind of tagging the objective and chaining out. Those units cannot use move abilities in the first movement phase of the battle round. If it is impossible for a unit to be set up this way, it is set up in reserve as a lost unit. And then Stumbling Forth, you pick a lost unit and you set up the unit on the battlefield more than 9 inches from all enemy units and wholly within 7 inches of a battlefield edge. This is chaotic. This is like really chaotic. This is just going to be units teleporting around, the underdog controlling who's teleporting around. Very interesting. All right. So for scoring, each player scores victory points at the end of each turn as follows: 5 victory points if you control at least one objective. 3 victory points if you control 2 or more objectives, and 2 victory points if you control more objectives than your opponent. So this is kind of like the old 1-2 more. But the scoring kind of goes down instead of the ways it's been done previously. It's not like an even number. So we're potentially scoring 10 points per battle round for a total of 50. So this one is going to be more important to have your battle plan points than it is to have your battle tactic points. This is very interesting to me, that the importance of your battle tactics or the battle plan is going to change based on which battle plan you're playing. Very interesting. Most of the objectives on this are outside of friendly territory or outside of players' territories. And then the one in the middle. This is going to be very interesting. And, with those battle tactics that get you to want to be in the corners of the battlefield or controlling stuff in enemy territory, this is going to be an interesting way to accomplish that. All right, battle plan number 3, Roiling Roots. If you're the underdog, you use the Tangling Tendrils ability. You pick a pair of objectives to be the targets. For the rest of the battle round, units, friendly or enemy, have strike last while they are contesting either target objective. Now, I believe what they mean by pairs of objectives are ones that are like the same symbol or maybe same color. So you see here that the pairs of objectives appear to be the 2 reds or the 2 greens. I don't know if these are going to be considered the same or not as a pair. So while units are contesting the target objective, they get strike last. Very interesting. And then our victory points as follows: 5 if you control at least one objective, 3 if you control a pair of objectives, and an additional 2 if you control more objectives than your opponent. So we've seen scoring like this in the past as well. This one is kind of just like a straight up mission, very much like what we've had in the past. An interesting arrangement of objectives. I like that it's not just, it's kind of straight lines across, that we have a bit of a diagonal setup for the objectives, which is kind of counter to the standard deployment zones that we have going on here. And, our twist only being like units striking last when they're on a certain pair of objectives. That the power of that is going to be interesting. I'm not sure how that's going to necessarily play out, but we will see. All right. Number 4, cyclic shifts. If you're the underdog, you get unpredictable evolution. You pick a pair of objectives to be the targets. The target objectives are no longer controlled by either player, and they cannot be controlled this battle round. So shutting off objectives 2 at a time. Scoring 5 victory points if you control one objective, 3 victory points for 2 or more, and 2 victory points for controlling more than your opponent. And let's look at this. This is another interesting, diagonal sort of deployment, pulling you in weird directions. But man, that's those 2 objectives in the corners. That's going to be interesting. All right. This one looks like it got cut off a little bit, but let's just check the chat again. Don't have anything thus far. Hopefully this is actually streaming properly. Everything looks like it is, but all right. Not sure. Oh, there we go. What is going on with this at the moment? Nope. This. Hold on. There we go. Anyway, I'm not sure what's going on with StreamYard at the moment because I can't scroll my screen. Anywho, let's look over here. Surge of Slaughter is battle plan number 5. You'll see the trend here that the underdog gets to use a special ability every turn. So this is all also for really, really discouraging people from taking double turns, because then your opponent's the underdog for the rest of the battle and they just get to have free reign on all of these abilities. All right, for the rest of the battle round, add 1 to the Ren characteristic of friendly units' melee weapons while they are contesting either of the target objectives. So you pick a pair of objectives and you get bonus rend while you're contesting that objective. I mean, man, I like that. Just if you're the underdog, you just get more power on certain objectives. All right, and then 5 VP for at least 1, 3 VP for a pair, and 2 VP if you control more objectives than your opponent. And once again, this is a 5 setup, so you're going to probably want to hold at least 3 of them, only 1 in the deployment area of either of the players, 1 dead center, 2 way off to the side. Okay, number 6, linked ley lines. This one is like working around manifestations, so I don't know how much this is really going to matter. Let's take a look at the map. So fairly standard, just like cross pattern, standard deployment. All right, so our underdog abilities. Friendly units' weapons have anti-manifestation +1 rend. Most manifestations don't have really good armor anyway, so I don't really care. So full of life, friendly manifestations have strike first. Okay, now for the complicated part. A linked ley line is formed across the battlefield, long edge to long edge or short edge to short edge, while one player controls all of the objectives on that line. So either controlling the 3 down the middle or the 3 across. Okay. So let's take a look here at our scoring. Each player scores victory points at the end of each turn as follows. Score 3 victory points if you control at least 1 objective. Score 3 victory points if you control 2 or more objectives. Score 2 victory points if you control any pairs of objectives. Score victory points if you control all of the objectives on a linked ley line. So that's going to be a challenge to do that last bit. But we've got, potentially scoring 10 VP per turn here. This one's going to be interesting. I like it. It's kind of a twist on a very standard sort of mission. All right, moving on to table number 2. The Noxious Nexus. If you are the underdog, you can use the Caustic Sap ability. At the start of the battle round, you pick an objective. Each unit contesting that objective is a target. Roll d3 on each target. On a 2+, inflict amount of mortal damage equal to the roll. If you picked the Heartwood objective, so the one here, this is a very interesting deployment, but the one wholly outside of everybody's territory, you roll a d6 for each target instead. I love this deployment and whole setup of this. It is asymmetrical terrain, right? Like you've got more terrain off on the right side of the board than on the left. Everybody's deploying everything on one side of the board, and then you've got an objective in the middle and on the other side of the board. So this is really going to be interesting. Like armies that have some sort of teleport ability or very fast units are going to be able to go out there and grab that objective, but then, you're going to be scoring more points if you do have it, and then you won't be the underdog, and the underdog is potentially going to be spiking a bunch of damage on your units in there. All right. Objectives cannot be controlled in the first battle round. Each player scores victory points at the end of each of their turns as follows: 5 victory points if you control Oakenbrow, 3 victory points if you control Gnarlwood. So that's the one in the center. So 5 victory points for the right, 3 for the center, 2 for Heartwood. That's the left objective. At the end of the battle, a player scores 10 victory points if they control the Heartwood objective. So you want to control Heartwood at the end of the game, but it's not giving you a lot in the early game. Okay. This is very interesting. I love this battle plan. This is another interesting one, a little bit offset. Only 2 objectives on this, which means there's an interesting twist to it. Life begets life. Pick a friendly unit that has all of its models within 1 inch of a terrain feature to be the target. Return 1 slain model to the target unit. What? Like, not great if you are talking about like an infantry unit, but if it's a unit of Baron Guard, getting a Baron Guard back is very good. Sorry, I was just responding to a message from my wife who was like, "What? Where are you? Are you almost done?" And we're getting there. Okay. Now, each player scores 1 life root point at the end of each of their turns for each terrain feature they control. All right. So, 8 terrain features. So you're scoring potentially up to 8 points each battle round, like at the max for that. Well, I'm sorry. Let's go back. You score 5 victory points for 1 objective, 3 victory points for both, 2 victory points if you have more life root points than your opponent. So controlling more terrain than your opponent does. I mean, that's super interesting. That's really getting you to spread out to score those last victory points. It seems like on all of these battle plans, like the score 5 is not that hard, and they become increasingly difficult for less points. That's very interesting. I don't really know what to make of that quite yet. So I will have to have a sit and ponder of what all of this means. I'm just kind of reading through it all for now, to kind of give you guys a taste of what is to come. All right. Underdog gets Rejuvenating Bloom. You pick an objective to be the target. Heal 3 for each friendly and enemy unit contesting the target objective. That's interesting. If you're the only one on that objective, you just heal 3. If your opponent doesn't have anything to heal, you can still heal 3. All right. Scoring: 5 victory points for 1 objective, 3 for 2 or more. And then 2 victory points if you control all 3 kinds of objectives. That is very interesting, once again, because you're going to have, like, to control more than your opponent, you're usually going to have to control 3. So you kind of automatically score 5 if you can score 2. Load more images. Okay. Oh my goodness. This one is very interesting. All right. And complicated. Life cycle. At the start of the second battle round, the underdog must use the life cycle ability. If there is no underdog, the players roll off and the winner must use the life cycle ability. Pick either Oakenbrow, that's red, or Gnarlroot, that's green, objective to be the primary objective at the start of each subsequent battle round. The next objective in the cycle becomes the primary objective. And you can see the cycle off to the right here. So it's just going to be cycling around the map. Okay. The objectives before and after the primary objective in cycle order are the secondary objectives. Okay. So basically in battle round 2, you start the cycle. And the underdog gets to pick where it begins. And then it just cycles around. Each player scores victory points at the end of each of their turns as follows: 4 victory points for controlling 1, 2 victory points if you control more, 4 victory points if you control Oakenbrow and Gnarlroot, only in the first battle round, 2 victory points if you control the primary objective, and 1 victory point for each secondary objective you control. Man, that's complicated, but also fun and interesting. I love when the scoring of objectives moves around. This is also very predictable. Once it starts, you know where it's going to be, so you can plan ahead. This one's awesome. Another really awesome one. Okay. Creeping Corruption. If you're the underdog, you get pulsing life energies. You pick an objective you control and one other objective, whether you control it or not. Draw a line between the centers of those 2 objectives, then choose Propagation or Corruption. Propagation, add 1 to casting, enchanting rolls, and banishment rolls for each unit crossed by the line for the rest of the turn. Corruption, inflict D3 mortal damage on each unit crossed by the line. So let's take a look at that. Is very complicated. Okay. You pick an objective you control, and then any other objective, you shoot a line across the board, and you do stuff. Possibly doing damage, possibly adding to casting rolls. I have a feeling like casting rolls is probably going to be like the first battle round, and then most of the rest of the game is probably going to be doing damage to your opponent, or at least trying to. All right. Victory points. Each player scores 5 victory points if you control 1, 3 victory points if you control 2 or more, and then 2 victory points if you control more objectives than your opponent. So your standard 1, 2 more. And a very standard map, but made more interesting by, with the 6, there's a lot of different combinations of how you're going to shoot those lines across the board for either the buff or the debuff. Can be a powerful thing for the underdog to have, for sure. All right, and now our final one, Grasp of Thorns. The underdog gets carnivorous flora. You pick an objective to be grasping. Roll a die for each unit contesting that objective on a 3+. Every model in that unit that is within the control zone of that objective is entangled for the rest of the battle round. Entangled models must stay within the control zone of the grasping objective for the rest of the battle round. While a unit has any entangled models, it cannot be removed from the battlefield by any ability that will allow it to be set up elsewhere on the battlefield. So let's look at what the deployment looks like. Just 4 objectives. Terrain looks like it's kind of going to be in the way on this because you have 2 big area or obstacles like right in the middle of the board. And then our scoring is just our 1, 2 more. All right. So that's everything. What do we make of this? Man, I don't really know. Um, this is going to change everything. What I will say is the battle plans and the battle tactics are making you do things in a way that is very much what like narrative battle plans do. So if you like this and you haven't played a narrative event before, probably check it out. There are going to be players that absolutely hate this, I think, because it's so pulling you in different directions, right? When you're choosing the battle tactics, you probably also want to be thinking about the battle plans and synergizing your battle tactics with the battle plans or the potential battle plans you'd be playing. All right. Well, I think I am going to go call it there. This is really interesting. I'm very excited. I've probably said the word interesting far too much in this review here, but anyway, I'm going to call it for now. I'll talk to you all later.